There's just a lot of stuff out there that is amazing that happens, but maybe just doesn't get even noticed.
Does procurement have a role in accelerating that timeline or decelerating that timeline? When I said the word RFP, I could see the smile went down.
Procurement is always part of every single sales process that I've been a part of. Why I love sales is the problem solving aspect.
Thanks, Nels. It's good to see you. This is very a bizarre actually conversation for me to do in a professional way because I've known Nels forever, but I'd love if you could give a quick intro of, who you are, what you do, some of your experiences, where you're calling in from. I see a door and a fire alarm, so that's good, but
Yeah, no, Spencer, it's great to be here with you. Like you said, I've known you, the majority of your life, really.
yeah,
Got
certainly.
got to know you through skiing in Vail back when I was a ski instructor at Vail Resorts, and we met at Beaver Creek.
Yeah.
Taught you how to snowboard, which I don't know if you've done that at all recently, but
Not recently, no.
we you read through snowboarding, and obviously know your whole family. Had a chance to you really see your whole family grow up and develop into the wonderful young leaders that you are now. So yeah, this is awesome. But yeah, I'm in Tampa, Florida. I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in California, spent some time in the Bay Area, and worked in technology, working now in real estate, worked obviously in the ski resort industry, originally from Minnesota in the Midwest. So kind of really have lived actually in just about every time zone, I think, in the United States now. That's kind of a fun thing. But yeah, I think what really interests me, I guess, are innovation, and startup companies that are disrupting. I think I talked to a friend of mine this morning about something that he wants to do, and it's a really novel idea. And I think people like you that are doing things that are really breakthrough technologies in this day and age, the more that I can help people to develop their ideas and bring them to market and help really evangelize. I think that's what I try to do. I try to support my friends and support their endeavors, and that's really what I'm here to do today.
Well, I really appreciate that, Nels, and I'm excited for the conversation. So you spent most of your career in software sales, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been in software sales 11 or 12 years now. Yep.
Wow. And I'm kind of curious, how did you get into the sales space originally? Like what motivated you besides just being charming?
Well, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've run a few of my own businesses in my career as well. And when my wife got a job in the Bay Area, that moved us out there, and she's actually in procurement. I'm sleeping with the enemy, but we like to swap stories with each other and help each other out through interesting situations. Both sides of that coin, right? So it makes it a unique relationship. So yeah, and I guess back then when we first went to San Francisco, some funny stories. Like I'd lived in Colorado, I lived in Vail, been in the mountains. Really was kind of a more adventurous, not really an urban person. I mean, I grew up in a city, but having spent so much time away from that, that literally I'd walk up to some of the subways or the BART doors and the metro, whatever the muni, and it would just be so full. I'd just be like, okay, I'm not getting on. I'm just gonna keep walking. One of those funny things that when you get to a really big city like that, especially at that time,
Mhm.
when there were just so many people there and it was just really growing, the financial district was buzzing with activity, and it was a great time to be there. So I latched on with a company that was part of Thomson Reuters at the time,
Okay.
and we were in the domain and brand protection space
Okay.
called Mark Monitor, and I was in a unique situation there where I was working in the anti-piracy on the anti-piracy team. So we're helping content creators really to roll out and protect their digital assets. And
Right.
it was a unique time to be there because a little bit like kind of where we are now with certain changes that are happening. Everybody was trying to become the next Netflix, right? This is before you had a lot of streaming activity, and everybody was trying to get to the point where they could stream all their content. How do you protect your content? How do you keep it safe? How do you keep it from being pirated? Because as soon as you put it out there, it just makes it that much easier to get access digitally.
No, it's really interesting. So I'm kind of curious. Did your wife get into procurement before, or after, around the same time that you got into sales?
She went to Michigan State, and so she did her whole career was based around kind of the supply chain management, career. So she started out, as a consultant with IBM and then kind of evolved into a couple different roles and worked at Apple. That's what brought us to the Bay Area.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm kind of curious, how often in your role in sales did you end up interacting with procurement teams versus spending your time with the end users, beneficiaries of that software? And it doesn't, I'm not, I know it may vary depending on the company too.
Yeah. Procurement is always part of every single sales process that I've been a part of. And I think that's largely because I'm dealing with enterprise, right? And in any enterprise, you're going to have procurement as sort of the gatekeeper to saying, okay, what is this? What is it doing for us? What value does it bring? And, it's not that we have to sell to them necessarily, but you got to at least elicit and share the highlights and the value that we're gonna be bringing to the company. Like, why choose us versus somebody else? It's definitely one of those things where you have to be constantly wearing your educator hat, coach hat, trainer hat, to really get them up to speed in a quick way. And that's really, I think, what the art of good sales is
Yeah.
making the technical stuff simple enough for somebody like my wife in procurement to understand.
No, I think it makes sense. And so how often, I'm kind of curious, how often do you find in the sales world, maybe for you guys or maybe more generally, do folks try to do everything in their power to avoid procurement, versus say, hey, look, we want to bring procurement to the table earlier? And by the way, I think, obviously not all procurement professionals are alike, and I've worked with my fair share at Lightsource that I think are amazing champions and advocates for us. I've also worked with a few. We had a negotiation just this morning where we were about to do a contract signature, and in the 11th hour, somebody from Indirect added this last minute change that was like a pretty big change to the contract. It was like, we're supposed to sign today. And it was like, I looked this up. Apparently, there's a term for it. It's called nibbling. It's when you're at the 11th hour and you move the goalpost just a little bit. And I thought that was a funny term. It's just something I learned this morning. But how has your experience been interacting with procurement? And like, is it, and what's the perspective from the sales community at large?
I think there's always this a bit of a us versus them mentality, but that's why I kind of made the joke about sleeping with the enemy. Just because I think you look at them in a sort of antagonistic way when I think it really has to be a partnership. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like you would with any of your end users and your champions. You have to create a champion in them too. And hey, you know what? I think we all build into our sales proposals that procurement's going to get their pound of flesh. We have to at least admit that that's going to happen, and that's okay. I think we know that. I think when we get frustrated is when procurement pushes back so hard that it's like, well, why are we even doing this deal? That's when I think it gets frustrating from a sales perspective, where they seem to be like, okay, you got to sell me now. Even though the business users want it, there's a business case that's been made, the value's been established. You need this. You're not displacing an incumbent, maybe, or even if you are, you're superior to them. I think that's where it gets frustrating, and it stalls the sales cycle, because as salespeople, we want things to close, right? And when that closing gets delayed by procurement or a procurement process, which today, I think the thing that's changed probably the most in the last 5 years is that the procurement processes have gotten a lot more prolonged, right?
For a long.
Yeah, just because there's so many more things to look at. It's not just looking at, what are you going to be doing by embedding in our tech stack, but what kind of data are you incorporating? What kind of AI are you bringing in? There's a myriad of issues they're at play here that maybe weren't at play, say, 5 to 10 years ago.
It's interesting. I mean, does procurement have a role in accelerating that timeline or decelerating that timeline? Do you think that they have a motivation in one direction or another? I mean, how do you think about, procurement in terms of like helping vendors potentially navigate that internal complexity, or you think it's not really where they focus?
I think if they're a true professional and if they know their space and they know the company that they're at really well, they will be upfront with you and
Yeah.
they will tell you. Like most recently, I had a meeting with a new prospect that we were bringing on. They were onboarding us as a vendor, and she just said up front, "Hey, here's what the process is, and this is how long it's going to take." And we kind of knew it would take some time, but I don't think anybody knew it would take that long. We sort of heard grumblings that, hey, this could take 8 weeks, could take 10 weeks. We were hoping it wasn't going to take that long as salespeople do. You're a bit more optimistic, but the reality is, like I said, there's boxes that have to be checked on that side of the house too, right? So they need to go through their IT process. They need to go through the legal review. They need to go through the AI review now. They need to go to the data privacy review. There's a lot of these things that are much more of a big they're a bigger deal than I think anybody takes into account. So some of the older salespeople, I think, look at this and like, oh, this is just crazy. It's taking this. Processes have changed at these companies, and they're gonna be they're gonna scrutinize the vendors that they're working with to a higher degree. And my wife can attest to that too. I mean, she's
Of course.
you know,
No, it makes perfect sense. And sort of interesting, you're describing a lot of the P of medic, right? The paper process. Do you think that the average procurement professional is aware of the sales side of the house and the kind of like qualification frameworks folks use? I'm kind of curious, what are the things if you were to talk to, your wife or anyone who's in the procurement field, what are the things you feel like they should know about sales when interacting with sales? You're sleeping with the enemy. What's the inverse kind of look like for folks in the procurement space?
yeah, I think what it comes down to for procurement people is that number one, knowing that the value that this product or service is going to provide. So there has to be a strong business case. And I think on that side of the house, typically they're working with the business users, right? And the business users are working closely with them to let them know, okay, here's what it is. Here's why we need it. And they're making a case for you. That's the champion part, right? But at the same time, I would say that probably what frustrates them about salespeople is when we try to end run them. We try to go around them and try to skirt the process. And they've laid out sort of the ground rules. Trying to play nice, walk hand in hand, I think is the way you have to go. And if they say the process is going to take as long as it's going to take, they're probably giving the worst case scenario. But at the same time, we all have to do our part, right? So getting the right people to the table is important. And again, stakeholder management and bringing all those people together, I think is probably one of the biggest things that we need to do from the sales side.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I don't know if you can share this, but when is an example? I'd love if you could share like an example of a time where, spoke with your wife to try to understand, how to deal with a procurement situation. I don't need specific names of the companies or people,
Yeah.
but
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. So anytime I'm on a call and I just want to share sort of a little bit of tidbits of information that I got, like, what do you think this means? Or an email, especially, like literally, I mean, just to get some more information. Or most recently, just in a deal that seemed to take forever that we finally got done,
yeah,
having her even listen in to like some of the calls we're having, just
interesting.
yeah.
Like, what's her intuition about?
I think she's definitely more on the side of, like, she's a skeptic all the time, like, she's a woman, right? So she's got her personal intuition that, super
Course.
what you and I can do, right?
Yeah.
So she leads with that, right? And is always skeptical of every salesperson and of every process and whatever. So I think anytime that I'm thinking optimistically, she's probably saying, I don't know. I think that might take longer. That might be a little bit." So it definitely makes my spidey sense stronger than probably other people. I think that would be a good benefit that I have is I have her as a resource, and she's very experienced with these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Bouncing things off of her and letting her sort of weigh in on it, it just gives me a different perspective.
Have there been times where she has sought out your counsel related to approaching her at,
Yep.
in her world at I don't know if I'm allowed to say when she was at Apple, for examples?
Yeah, 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 and now she's at a different company, and she just has started a new role there, and,
Oh, yeah, congratulations.
yep, yep, so she's got a new role that she just started over the summer, and she's a director of procurement there, and
Amazing.
basically, she'll ask me all the time, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this product? Because she doesn't know a lot of these, so they have a lot of vendors that they're using, and it seems like it's a bit, it's not quite a startup. It's owned by a PE firm, but
Yeah.
so it's beyond startup stage. But at the same time, they have a lot of different processes that are sort of out of whack. That's really what she was kind of brought in to sort of rein in a bit, is all the different vendors that they're using and why. So that's one of the things that I think when you're in a procurement role, I think you are there, people think, to save money. You're there to sort of put the screws down and do whatever, has to be done to help the bottom line. But at the same time, you're also there to sort of rein things in, and just at a lot of companies, things get really mismanaged or disorganized. And so you have to bring in somebody like my wife to do the work that needs to be done to kind of get the house in order.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, there's some like interesting businesses I've seen over time where they don't focus on, like there was one company I was talking to where their main focus was not to negotiate software license pricing, but to give you better reporting on utilization and access and stuff. Because, okay, I could negotiate the price per seat down by 10%, but if I can figure out who really needs this. And if there's 10 different versions of effectively the same thing, can be more strategic, save people headaches, save IT headaches. So there is a lot of value add, I think, when you start to get past the mentality of like, hey, we're here to just crunch numbers. It is really interesting. So I guess I'm kind of curious, have you seen anyone ever transition from one role to the other, go from sales to
You know,
procurement?
that's a good question. I have seen people go from procurement to sales. And I don't know if I've seen anybody go from sales to procurement. I'm not sure if they.
I've seen people, I've heard of it. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of value in that. But yeah, I love to hear the example and why they made the move.
I think there's a huge advantage to go from one direction or the other. I think
Yeah.
just because you're able to walk a bit in someone else's shoes, right? And as salespeople, we always try to do that anyways. So if you can say, "Hey, I've done this before," understand the challenges, and have some empathy, I think that can be a huge advantage, because it's not always. I think with the way that sales has been done traditionally, it's like, "Hey, you need this. This is why," and it's like, we're going to tell you 100 times the same story, right? We're not gonna ever deviate from that, because we just know the best, and this is how it should be. Whereas I think in the more modern sales techniques, you're trying to forge a partnership, and you're trying to put yourself in that person's shoes in every single conversation you're having. To be good at the art of sales, you want to understand, like, what perspective are they taking when they're looking at this?
Yeah.
Why are they asking this question, And let's dig a little deeper and get to the bones of, like, what are they really getting at with their questions here? Because it's maybe not that they have uncertainty or doubt. It's just that they want to know more. And I think, again, that quest for knowledge and that understanding is really the hallmark of a good salesperson and a good procurement professional.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, how does that butt up against, for example, when you get put into an RFP process, right? Where you say, hey, we've got a few different software vendors that we think could fill this need. We know the need is real. And so now let's go into a competitive RFP where we're evaluating like for like features and also apples to apples pricing. How's your experience been responding to RFPs? Some companies, by the way, take the opinion if we didn't write the RFP, we don't participate, and that's totally valid. But I'm kind of curious. Like when I said the word RFP, I could see your the smile went down. So I'm kind of curious. Yeah, to get your 2 cents.
Yeah, I think when it comes to RFPs from a sales perspective, it's tricky, because you want to put your best foot forward. It's a ton of work from the sales side to answer all the questions and fulfill all the requirements. And there's a lot of great software out there now that helps with that. So I think
Yeah.
that's useful, right? To at least expedite the process. But it seems like more and more, especially for many software products, they're asking for RFPs. You get into these situations where you don't even really know how you're being measured. And I think that's the hardest part, is it's sort of this black box. And you might get a little intel from somebody on the other side at some point or another. But a lot of times, even if you had a good connection before, they're not going to talk to you. They're rather tight-lipped about it. And I think that's the hardest part from the sales side. And then you either hear up or down, okay, and you don't even hear typically why.
If you could hear at the end why, is that something that would change your approach to the process? Like, if you were to redesign the RFP process, like, what would be the things that you'd do differently, and what would be the benefits of the procurement team in doing that?
I think just in terms of getting feedback, like, I think just to be a have it be a fully transparent two-way process. Like, we're giving you all this information about us. We'd love to know kind of how did we score? How did we measure up? Now, I don't need to know what the other, you know, vendors scored necessarily. I just want feedback on what you thought about us. What were the benefits for us versus the competition, and what do you see as downsides working with us? And when I've been in a really good relationship with those people on the other side, they will tell us, and it's been really helpful. I was in an RFP a few years ago when I was at a small startup, and we were going up against Deloitte. But the fact that we were there and we got the feedback, hey, you guys were great, you were really close, but we had uncertainty just because you're small and we weren't sure. And this was with a big CPG company.
Yep.
And they said, hey, you know what? I think down the road, we still want to work with you. We just have to use them. We already have an existing contract with them, and this consulting firm can maybe do what we want them to do. We're not really sure, but as long as you spend enough money, we would have been a lot cheaper. But I think getting the feedback that, hey, we were a really, really close solution. And had we just been a little bit bigger, had maybe better examples, more references. And so I think when you get that feedback, you just know what the goal where the goalposts are, You know how far you have to change and iterate and, improve upon what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm kinda curious, so what about, like, there's something that's a bit of a half step between those things, which is to run, like, a pilot or a proof of concept, and that's something that I think certain procurement teams, by policy for software, will ask about quite a lot. From my perspective, I will share that pilots are much more work than an RFP even is. So how do you think about, like, these sort of proofs of concept, proofs of value, pilots? Are they useful? Are they not useful? Do you avoid them like the plague? Do you want to engage in them? I'm just kind of curious to get your 2 cents. When it comes up in conversation, are you, like, trying to knock it away, or is it like, "Hey, we do have a pilot process?"
In my experience, a pilot can be really helpful. It's a bit of it's kind of like a test drive. However, I would say that unlike a test drive, there should be a deposit made. Just because there's a ton of work done by the team that you're working with, by this vendor that you're trying to see, okay, is this going to work or not? So let's make it at least a paid pilot, or at least have at the end of it all a success criteria that we've agreed to and we're measuring against throughout the whole process. And then at the end of that process, we might even have a contract that says, okay, well, if everything goes well, let's sign. Otherwise, we're putting up a ton of effort to what end, right? And how do we know, what's the outcome gonna be? Now, if you're a small company, maybe you just sort of have to succumb to it and say, okay, we'll do it. But I think once you reach a level of maturity as a company, I think it's better to say, all right, well, let's really assess what's the value for us gonna be at the end. Because even if you are a small company, especially if you're a small company, you're putting forth a ton of resources. We did one at a startup that I was at, and we had to hack a bunch of things together to make it work the way that they wanted it to. And we pulling in people from all over the world, and it just became like a very intense process. And then, of course, the budget for the whole project ended up getting pulled towards the end of it, and so there was no contract to be had, anyways. Now, was that a good experience for us to go through? Yes, of course it was. But did we gain any, income at the end and revenue for our bottom line? No, we did not.
Mhm. No, it makes a lot of sense.
And it's not always about revenue, right? There's learnings that can come of it. When I look at a pilot, I say, okay, number one, there has to be guardrails and boundaries established, right? Success criteria has to be agreed upon. And then, that typical start and end date, check-in times, and obviously if you can pay something for the resources that we're putting towards it, I think that obviously makes it more of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of curious, like, have you seen, and I know this is a topic that comes up all the time, but how has AI affected the world of sales and what you're seeing from procurement? I mean, I know it's all new, and I'm sure this is well trodden territory, but and by the way, the answer could be that it hasn't shown its face entirely yet, right? A lot of people say, "Hey, I do great things with ChatGPT," but in my business software, there's just like 3 years of lag to get things into production. I'm curious, have you seen it affecting your world and the procurement world that you interact with, or not so much, and in what ways?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say from the sales side of things, I think AI has definitely impacted how a salesperson operates today. The amount of research you can do so quickly, the understanding you can get about, what's going on in that industry with that company, it's great. There's also, I think the downside with it is some of the email stuff that gets sent out these days is just it's okay. It's a good starting point. It's helpful, but people who just rely only on AI to send emails, it's just so obvious. Actually, it's one of the things my wife and I laugh about a lot. You get these funny email responses. It's like, oh, AI wrote that. It's like everybody knows. So let's at least just up our game a little bit to yeah,
Huh.
I think just a general level of respect for people who are reading, like
Yeah, of course.
edit your AI email. And then I think also just from blasting out emails, it doesn't work. It's not a numbers game anymore. You got to be personal. You got to reach out to the right person. You got to connect with them. Like if I was contacting you, I would look into what you do, what you like, and I would try to connect on that before I'd even try to sell you something. I think
Yeah.
that's the important thing. Like treat people like people. And not that AI doesn't do that. AI tries to do that, but that's still the personalization that has to happen from a salesperson's perspective. And I think those who continue to do that will still be really successful. Those who rely on AI alone will not. On the procurement side, I think what's interesting there is that what I've seen in the last couple of sales cycles is what's come up is, do you have AI in your product? And if the answer is yes, then there's a whole other path you have to take in terms of review by procurement team.
Hmm.
That's a different thing, and as well as the data stuff too is a huge thing. But that's been around for a while longer, right? Data privacy, that's been around for a while. But what's new, I think, is that there's this whole new AI legal review. How are you using AI? What's it going to be doing if it's embedded in our tech stack? And if our internal, what kind of data are you pulling into your AI? So I think that all of those things require quite a bit of vetting. And so from the procurement side, there's just probably another level of understanding that has to happen about the product that they're bringing on board.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I would say that if your answer to the question, do you have AI in your product, is no, today, I feel like it's very hard to get a second conversation, Because really, I mean, it's like one of the things that's just, it's such a turbulent and crazy time. Every single person asks about AI on every single call that we get on. Now, luckily, we have .ai is literally in our domain and has been since before the word GPT even existed. But it is really on every board of directors meeting. People are talking about AI. What's the AI strategy? Then they ask the CEO. The CEO asks the chief procurement officer, "What's your AI strategy?" And then we get asked, "What's your AI strategy? How do you bring that to us?" And it's funny because I often ask people, it's sort of like a tool, right? So my response is not like, "We'll use AI for all these things." We say, "Well, what are the problems you want solved?" It is a tool like anything else. And then truly, it's often really blank stares. Like, we know we want AI, but we don't know what we need it for. And it's like, okay, like, well, let's just start by the things that, what are the pain points you're trying to solve? What are the challenges? And it is interesting because people often say that sales is about helping people identify problems and solve those problems, right? And I think the same AI has made it a little bit more even important now than it's ever been before. Last question I'm kind of curious about now is, you recently transitioned roles. You're starting a sort of a new career in some ways. But if you think about your experience in sales and your experience being married to someone in procurement, if you were to start a tech company today, what would that look like? What would you want to build, given the backdrop of your experience? And not necessarily just like what area, but what would be some of the aspects? Would you want to focus on enterprise or mid market? Would you want to build something that is really narrow for a very specific industry? What are the attributes of the product? Like, how would you think about it? Like optimizing for your experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in this day and age, it's almost too easy to start something. It just because of the AI tools and the availability of, you can build something just by yourself without even knowing to code now. So there's a ton of potential that's out there, and this is a funny question that you ask because I literally hammer away at so many ideas all the time with different people. But I think what is really, captivating to me is creating an exchange or creating a marketplace, right? Where things can be shared, things can be, that can be accessible. A little bit like what we see on social media, but even farther down than that. There's almost like an exchange of ideas, a marketplace of ideas, where you might have innovation meet with those who could take it to the next level. And maybe something like this is already out there, but I think to me there's a lack of, or there's a disconnect, right? Or there's this idea that you have to be in front of the right people. Is there a way that people who have ideas, and almost democratizing ideas and innovation. Is there a way to do that? And that's something that I just from my time in IP plus my time in sort of the data marketplace and data analytics space, monetization of all those things. I think that would be an interesting place to kind of
Hmm.
wrap my head around. And I don't know what if anything exists that's out there like that, but I don't know. That's just something that I've been thinking about.
Like, what's an idea that you heard that you would want to be in sort of a marketplace of ideas?
I think so. Let's just say, like, I think one of the things that I noticed in my recent company was just the level of innovation and accessibility or inaccessibility and understanding to what assets they actually even have. What IP do they actually even own? Huge enterprise companies don't even have any idea in many cases because they have so much or they've acquired so many companies. And so there's just a lot of stuff out there that I feel like is amazing that happens, but maybe just doesn't get even noticed.
Mhm.
Or they may actually have IP assets that they don't even know that they have. Or they may change their strategy. They may offload those IP assets to whom, and why. I think there's a lot of questions out there that came up during my most recent role where I felt like kind of an underserved place potentially. I don't know.
Interesting. What's an IP asset? Like, what would that include?
Like a patent, trademark, things that would have value from an intellectual property perspective, copyright.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, this has been super helpful, Nels. I really appreciate you making the time. Is there anything that I should have asked that I didn't?
Well, I will expound on something you said recently. I think that one of the things I love about sales is solving problems. I think
Yeah.
a good salesperson is there to solve problems and isn't even there to generate, revenue for themselves or whatever, but we come as salespeople to help as vendors with great products to help solve problems, to help come up with solutions that can hopefully make everybody's day better, improve efficiency, give better understanding, move the company forward in the right direction, whatever it might be. So I think to me that's strategically that's sort of where I sit in terms of why I love sales is the problem solving aspect.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate the time, Nels. I couldn't agree more. The sales world was a total accident for me. I can't even, I'm a little bit in both myself, right?
Yeah.
Building a procurement product, but trying to get into the hands of the right folks. So thanks for the time, and I will talk to you later.
All right. Take care, Spencer.